What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the North Leeds Jitz podcast, episode 148, I believe. This time with Coach Sula, who is doing a seminar, for both kids and adults this evening. And she's an amazing competitor, coach, and I'm really excited to hear more about your story, Sula.
Thank you for having me.
I've already asked you a lot of questions since you got here, so we're going to rehash some of them for the audience as well. Why don't you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you?
Yeah, so I was born in London, but I actually grew up in Australia from like the age of 3, and then moved back to London when I was 18. But basically just went to school, lived my life there, and then right as school finished, I had a couple of friends doing jiu-jitsu. And so they were like, come to jiu-jitsu. And I was like, I'll come as soon as exams are over. And so literally the minute I finished school, I was like, all right, come try class. And I was very not super athletic growing up. I was not unfit, but I was just not really into athletics that much. And never into competitive sports particularly. And then I started doing jiu-jitsu and I was like, oh, this is really fun. Kept going. Convinced my mum to get me a gi for Christmas, which took so much convincing because I had a habit of just starting things and then dropping them. And she's like, you're never going to continue it. I don't want to spend that much money on a gi, la, la, la. And I was like, please trust me on this one.
Eating those words now, Mum.
Yeah, literally. So then she bought me my first gi for Christmas. And a couple months after that, I did my first competition, for about 4 months after starting training. I don't even remember what I got. Maybe a silver or something in that competition. And then,
before I go into that, why did your family move to Australia when you were 3 and why did you move back?
It's a good question. So my mum's Australian, my dad's English.
Okay.
So I have 3 older siblings, and a half sister and 2 stepbrothers, but 3 older siblings I grew up with. And so they all grew up my brother and sister were born in Australia. Then they moved to England when they were 3, lived there till they were 13 or something. And then when I was born, we all moved back to Australia just because my mum was sick of being so far away from my family and sick of the cold. So she finally convinced my dad to move there. And then when I was about 8, my parents split up. So my dad came back to London and my siblings were all older than me. So my sister moved over here about 5 years before me. And I always wanted to travel the world. So I was like, I want to leave Australia because I grew up in a beautiful place, but a very small kind of not much happens in the area kind of place. And in Australia, the culture is very much don't rush to go to uni. Well, anyway, the school I went to, don't rush to go to uni, take a gap year. Mm-hmm. It's massive in Australia. Everyone takes a gap year. So the intention was to take a gap year. And then that just turned into a gap life. Never went to uni, just jiu-jitsu. So so I kind of just followed my sister and came over here because my dad was here. And then,
Now I have a theory that and I think this is going to help me here on my theory, the youngest sibling tends to be the toughest sibling. Now, I don't say this out of bias myself. I'm not the youngest sibling, but I think just in general when with 2 older brothers, for me, I have a younger sister, just scrapping around the house.
Yeah.
You end up being, if you're the smallest, you're usually it flows downhill kind of thing. Yeah. So are any of your siblings tougher than you?
No. Definitely not. My sister's the only one that does jiu-jitsu. She's been a blue belt for 5 years because she just kind of only comes every now and then.
Right.
She's good, but she's not training enough. But yeah, both of my brothers don't let me go near them anymore. They're don't come near me or I'll scream.
They sound like they got PTSD or something.
So I have one who's 10 years older than me. He bullied the other one who's 6 years older than me, and then he bullied me. Yeah. So in a loving way. But we used to wrestle all the time. And obviously he's 6 years older than me, so I just got smashed constantly. He would basically mount me, cover my arms with his knees, and then tickle me, switch between tickling and slapping my forehead. And I was stuck. And I just remember one day figuring out, trying to calming down and breathing and being all right, how the hell am I going to get out of this? No one can hear me. He's not stopping. Crying's not helping. So I was hang on. If I put my feet next to my hips and I push my bum in the air, he's going to face plant. And so I discovered a mount escape.
Nice.
And I was oh, that worked. And he's whoa, how did you do that? And then years later down the track, I was I learned the mount escape in jiu-jitsu and I was like, huh.
I mean,
Legit.
invention, the necessity being the mother of invention kind of thing. I think I still have PTSD about people tickling me with 2 older brothers. You know, like that is just the thing.
Yeah.
Although we were watching it was the era of a lot of WWE, like wrestling.
Yeah.
So my brother would do. In fact, the first day of primary school, I think it was. So I was like 5. My brother, who's 8 years older than me, did a move called the Last Ride, which is this wrestler the Undertaker did, where they kind of flipped you up so your legs would be over the shoulders here.
Oh my God, yeah.
And slam you down. But it slammed me down into the sofa. But me just being like made of jelly at the time, I guess. Like my knees both travelled up and hit both my eye sockets. So I looked like a panda bear with 2 black eyes going into my first day of school.
No.
And luckily the school, having known my family through my older brother and stuff, weren't like, is this child being abused? They were okay with it, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
that's
a
funny.
good one. So you get to London. What's the plan?
So I came here 6 years ago. Actually, 7 years ago this month. That's crazy. And yeah, the plan was it was like 9 months after starting jiu-jitsu, I moved here. I'd done about 2 comps in Australia, really loved it. So found out my cousin was training as well. And he was also, we were both 3-stripe white belts, like, woo. And so, and he lived in London. So he was like, come to my gym, which was Gracie Bar Fulham. And so I went there and like, my plan was to come to London. I came with one of my best friends and we were going to travel around and stuff. Got to London, went to jiu-jitsu after I went on like a couple trips, then I came to Gracie Bar and I was like, okay, cool. And then I like signed up for a 6-month membership and I like walked away and I was like, oh, I thought I was planning on traveling, but I guess now I'm here for 6 months at least. And then, I just started training and really enjoyed it.
Does your cousin still train?
He is still a blue belt.
Okay. Seems
still trains, still very tough. But yeah, he's,
your sister and your cousin like having a battle. Who can stay?
Who's going to be there longest? But yeah, he's had like 2 kids now since. So it's just on and off for him. But yeah, he still trains. I'll say that he still trains. So yeah, then after about 3 months of training in Gracie Bar, they were like, "Do you want to teach the kids? Because we need someone to help out." And I was like, great. And then kind of before I knew it, I was like competing, teaching, and living in the academy. And I was like, I guess I'm not traveling around anymore. Like, this is my life.
But I'm really centered in Fulham, actually.
I actually never left that like one road. Like we would just literally, like the shops, academy,
up to the
gym,
coffee
academy,
shop,
like nothing
down
else.
to the gym.
Yeah, that was it.
So you started to coach and stuff and you were training a lot. What was your first interaction of like the wider GB community? Like when we were introduced to, wait, were you training at a GB back in Australia?
No, so it's just a small
so
MMA gym.
When was it like, there's schools everywhere. There's this guy Victor or this guy Charlie or this guy Kendall's there.
Yeah, actually I think probably the first time I was exposed to like the idea of, obviously I knew that it was like a global academy, but the first person that I had like proper interaction with that I remember anyway was Kendall, because she was a purple belt, 20 at the time, and I think I was 19, and she came to London for like 2 months because she was doing like a competition she was doing Europeans and she was coming to London first. So I was living in the academy with my now husband, and then she was like, the Legato was like, yeah, she's going to be staying here too. So then we were all staying in the academy together for like 6 weeks or something. So we became really close. And then I had this great connection with the US as well. So then that same year I became a Gracie Bar ambassador. Was it that year or the year after? I can't remember. But basically when I went to America, then we kept seeing each other and coming back and forward. And then I got to meet Victor and all of like the GB community. So I was like, like this is huge. Like so much support. And like you can literally meet someone and then the next year you can go and stay with them and they like look after you and let you train there and like help out with the classes and everything. I was like, this is cool.
It is strange, that, isn't it? I'm not sure if there's many other hobbies like that where we talked about Jeremy earlier, where him and Kendall came for a seminar, met him one time. He was like, I need a place to stay until Polaris or something. I was like, come just live with me for 2 weeks or whatever it is, So, and the same with like later this year, I've met, a family in doing the GB summer camp and they're like, come stay with us in America. Like it creates these bonds of, I think especially within GB, but I know it is definitely in jiu-jitsu as a whole,
Yeah.
but where like, there's just a certain level of trust amongst people that, and I guess within jiu-jitsu where there is like a natural hierarchy, it's like, okay, well, the guy who teaches me, the guy who taught him teaches the same guy who taught your guy. So it's like,
so,
we'll
it's like, fine.
I'm sure he's cool.
Yeah.
So that's
and
nice.
I think you kind of know that you have similar like standards and like goals and stuff
Values
like that,
as well,
and
like that
morals
stuff,
and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely, and you have the accountability of the whole community. So if you're not a nice person to them, then you know that you're probably going to hear about it from your professor. Like, why were you mean to this person's person? That's like,
word spreads around. We had, I'm not sure if I can say this. We had I don't think they'll listen to it, so it'll be all right. We had someone who visited a school in Brazil, and it was a kid, and the parent, or it was the grandparent of the kid, was obviously quite rude to the instructor there, and they're Brazilian. But then that school like messaged us like pretty much straight away, being like, "Hey, look, this lady said being like really rude at the academy and stuff like that." So word spreads really quick within GB and the community. Yeah. So you get find out if you're a knobhead.
100%.
So what's the next step for you? You start competing more?
So like going back to then, you mean, or now?
Back then. So you were living with Kendall for a little while, and then
so we were in the academy. This was like still white belt, to be honest. So I was just competing, teaching like 7 days a week, living the like jiu-jitsu dream. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then eventually like we realized that living in the academy sucked. So we ended up getting like a flat, which was great. And then just, started to travel a little bit more to compete and take it a bit more seriously. And then I think one of the biggest steps for me was, my sister, so at that time she was working in the academy as well, and she was like, hey, there's this really cool thing called like the Gracie Barr Ambassador Program. You should apply. And I was like, no, I can't be an ambassador. What the hell are you talking about? And she's like, no, seriously, it's for like people who want to compete, and then they help and support and like help you go to the worlds and stuff. So I was like, okay. So I applied, and then I became the ambassador. And I think that for me was a huge boost, because I was like, wow, like people actually believe that I can like do something. And then I was like, all right, cool. I'd done Europeans a couple of times, but I was like, I'm going to go to Worlds. And then that was like this big thing. I was like so excited. I put all the effort into it. And we went with like the whole team. So Victor Stima took us all out. We stayed in a big Airbnb and went and trained with like Otavio Souza and like all this. And I was just like, what? And obviously I got to see Kendall again. And like, it was like the coolest experience. And I was like taking it so seriously, like having cold showers and like all of this crazy stuff. And then I lost my first fight. And I was like, oh my God, my life's over. Like, that's it. I'm not going to be an athlete. And then I kind of just realized like, oh, like, it's just one step at a time. Like I can't, nothing just happens automatically. Like you can put all the work in and you can still perform badly on the day, and that doesn't have to define anything. So I was just like, all right, cool. Go back to the mats, work on it, keep going. And then, from there, I guess I just kept pushing myself to compete and teach, and things kind of slowly started to pick up a little bit.
So that was your first experience at Worlds?
Yeah, 2019.
And what belt were you then?
Blue belt.
Right. And then you have a bit of a realization of, it's like a process. Yeah. What does training look like for you after this point?
God, that's a long time ago. I don't even remember. I think at that point, my training was like, I was training 7 days a week, probably like 3 classes a day, just going crazy. Trying to remember what like that switch was, but I think I remember just thinking I have to like do more big competitions because I performed really well in competitions. Like I was doing well, I was getting golds and stuff, and I knew that I had the skills, but what I lacked was the like ability to kind of control my emotions and my mindset on a big stage. So I was like, okay, let's try to focus on like just putting myself under the fire a bit more, getting used to that, so that when I go to a competition, I can feel the same as I do when I train. I think my training maybe didn't change that much, specifically because I was already training a lot. But I think, just tried to like think about putting myself under that pressure more often. yeah, trying to do as many bigger competitions as possible.
How big of a factor is that? Because obviously everyone gets nervous to some extent for competition, whether it be local or big. How much worse does it get the bigger the competition is?
Man, for me, it's weird because sometimes the smallest events are the worst. Like, I think I was like, yeah, I don't know, because I think it really depends on the pressure. Like, sometimes Worlds is like, it's like you decide the pressure you put on yourself, let's say. So sometimes if I'm going to like a smaller competition and I know I should beat the girl, I'll have way more pressure on myself than, for example, going to ADCC this year. I'm like, yeah, let's go have fun at ADCC. But like if I'm going to a competition where I should beat the girl, it's like, okay, if I go there and I lose, I'm going to look like an idiot. So I think it's all about what you make it. And that's the main thing.
Kind of around other people's expectations, I guess. If you're having a match and you're in the Worlds, you're like, okay, well, you lost at Worlds. Like, no,
Exactly.
like this is where the best in the world are. But if it's a local competition and people are like, oh, well, you're like going to Worlds, so you should beat random person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Have you struggled a lot with managing that mental side of things throughout your journey then?
Yeah, I think I've always been really good at losing. That's always been like like if you ask any of my teammates, they're like, yeah, she's really good at taking losses. So I think my mindset around losing is great. Just get up, go again, try to find the improvements and all of that. And I've always been like very big picture. So like from the beginning at white belt, I was like, I want to be a black belt world champion. I don't care about the other belts. Like that's just the process. So I think that's a double-edged sword with that, because not caring means sometimes you're not putting 100% in, but also like not caring is good, because then after if you don't win, then you can kind of pick yourself up a bit quicker. So I think the biggest struggle for me was like going in with the mindset of like, this is all part of the process, but also having the mindset of this is part of the process, but I also have to go 100% and believe that I can win in order for the process to be the best version of the process.
Yeah.
So that was a struggle for me. And yeah, I think I get distracted a little bit by like, I think everyone does at big competitions. Like, this is a world title. Like I've got to like, or like, look, the cameras are on me, or like that kind of stuff can very easily distract you. And then you're not really able to do jiu-jitsu because you're just thinking about like how cool it will be when you have a world title or something like that, instead of just passing the person's card.
So when did you make a bit of a switch to doing more no-gi stuff? Or have you made a really of a switch, or is it just...
I don't even want to make a switch with no-gi. Like, it's weird because I've done so much more gi ever since I moved to London. I've done mostly gi, and we do like one no-gi session a week max, maybe two. But I just naturally perform better in no-gi. And I have done since blue belt. Like, for example, I lost the gi worlds in 2019. And then I went to no-gi worlds and I got double bronze. And I had like 7 matches and I got like a bunch of submissions and stuff. So I performed way better. And I remember specifically the reason I performed better was because I did not give a single, like, I was like, this is just fun. Like, I don't care. Like, no one cares about no-gi. I don't know. At that point, I was like, I don't even train no-gi that much. So let me just go have fun. And I did way better. And then after that, I just started doing way better in no-gi. And I still haven't won a gi title, waiting for it. But I love both. And like, I definitely don't want to be like a no-gi only person. But right now, obviously it makes sense to just do no-gi.
Yeah.
At least for the rest of this year. And then hopefully transition back into the gi for like the season next year.
Are you going to do Euros next year?
That's the plan. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Planning to do Euros, and Worlds for sure. So,
yeah, I think me and Veronica are going to go out to watch Euros because it's in Lisbon, right? So
yes, finally.
yeah. So me and Veronica really like Lisbon anyway, and you get a chance to see Victor and all those guys. So it's nice to go out. So yeah, it'll be really cool to watch.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited about
and there's always good stories of like when the Euros are on and you're just walking down random street and there's Bushesha or whatever. It's just like
I have the best memories of Lisbon. Like that was because the first, I guess, 4 Europeans that I did were all in Lisbon. And like, we'd all go, like a huge team of us. We'd stay there for the whole week because it's Lisbon, it's cheap, it's fun. It's like 20 quid for a ticket, like 20 quid for hotels and stuff. It's so good. And then you just like the best memories ever, eating the best food. Like the weather's way warmer. It's still like 20 degrees in there, even though it's January. The venue's like so iconic because it's just, that's where like all the most incredible fights have been. And yeah, like the city is just filled with jiu-jitsu people. It wasn't the same in Paris. Like, oh my God,
Really?
like just so different. Like just didn't feel the vibe.
Yeah. Even like the people of Lisbon still, it's not been there a couple of years, right? But it's, they still remember it. And it's obviously and it's weird to talk to people who actually, they obviously know what jiu-jitsu is a lot more. Like here, if you say like jiu-jitsu, they're like, oh, what is that? It's like, is that karate? Or they kind of, if you see they've got cauliflower ears, it's probably they think you do rugby or something like that before, or maybe wrestling. Whereas when I've traveled in Portugal and Lisbon particularly, they're like, oh, do you do jiu-jitsu? Like, straight, I'm like, he knows. Which is very cool. So what's going on now? So you have competed. Oh, back on that no-gi thing. Do you think it is just that you didn't care so you competed better in no-gi? Or do you think there is something fundamentally different about gi and no-gi that just vibe better with your game or your physical attributes? Or
yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I think one major thing is the mindset for sure. But I think in general in no-gi, you can rely a lot more on your physical like attributes. So like I think my flexibility is super helpful for no-gi, much more so than gi. Like I feel like I have this feeling in no-gi where like it's really hard to submit. Like maybe it's probably not true, but I feel like no one can submit me in no-gi. And it's not true because people do, obviously. But I don't feel like that in the gi. I feel like in the gi, I'm like, oh my God, I'm trapped. Whereas no-gi, I feel like I'm trapped. Let me find a way out. And you can just like slide out. So I feel like, and I think you see this at the top level with no-gi, that like people that have, you know, been at the top of the game for the longest time can get caught by someone not so experienced, just because no-gi has so much more kind of opportunity for like random explosive stuff to happen. So yeah, I think that generally speaking, it's a little bit, there's a little bit more mystery in no-gi. Like you can get away with, I think you can get away with relying on heart a lot more in no-gi. Whereas in the gi, doesn't matter how much heart you've got, if someone's gluing, like holding on to you, sometimes you're just stuck, or wrapping your lapels up and stuff like that. So I think, I think passion comes into no-gi a little bit more than gi. And yeah, I always found that the mindset though, I just found that like, didn't have the belief in still haven't found the belief in the gi fully yet that I have in the no-gi.
Who are some of the athletes you like to look at yourself when it comes to gi or no-gi? Who do you like to watch?
My favorite athlete at the moment to watch actually is Mika Galvão, just because his like style is very like flexible and fast, and like I think he's got an incredible close guard. Obviously, I like to focus on close guard. I just find that that's always been where I'm drawn to. And I love watching how he uses, because he's super flexible for his size and his like, and just being a guy as well. So I love watching him and like how explosive he is and all of that. Another person I've always loved to watch is Leandro Lowe. I just found that like, that's someone that you like, they just look like they're absolutely dead. And then he just always used to pull out this incredible like heart, and just like, I would always just watch and be like, wow, like he could turn any fight completely around. And I love that side of jiu-jitsu, because I think it's easy to keep going when you're winning. And I think when you're in a bad position and you're losing, finding that energy of like, how am I going to win this? For me, that's the coolest thing to watch when I see athletes doing that.
Flow Grappling just put out a supercut of Mika Galvão's Grand Slam this year. And it's like an hour 40 of matches, and it's like, oh, this is so good to watch. That's
insane. Yeah, a legend. Such a cool athlete.
For you, when you've been traveling around and stuff, what are some of the tougher training rooms you've been in?
That's a good question. I will say, whenever I'm in Portugal with Victor Stima, like he's got some mad students there. Like
yeah.
we were just talking before about
Coach
his student Andre.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't know how old he is now, maybe 18, 19?
19, I think, yeah.
But when I first went there, he was a blue belt, I don't know, like 17 or 18. And he's quite light too. He's like 70 kilos. I was like, yeah, it'd be cool. And he just like killed me. And I was like, what? And he doesn't just kill you, but he just has an endless gas tank. So he's just like on the whole time. And you're just like, please, like, please. And he'll get you with the same thing over and over again as well, like really annoying style.
He's really nice as well, which almost makes it worse.
So sweet too. But those comp sessions are rough because they don't mess around. They go for 2.5 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
And then like when you think you're like done, then Victor will come in and just go into like a massive explanation of like all the details of this technique, and you're just like, now I have to learn all this incredible information and my brain's already fried and I'm so confused.
It's so much, man. I've been meaning to do this for a while. Is just take a few of the kids or like the team here to go to Braça da Prata to train.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many good stories that come from like every time you go there. Like there was one time, like Victor fully knows that I do not speak Portuguese, right? But and we joke about it a lot because my surname's de Souza, so like people expect me like even like the border office people see me like wearing a Gracie Barra thing and they're like look at my passport, they're like jiu-jitsu? They're like yeah. De Souza? Fala Portuguese? I'm like no, I'm sorry. And they look at me really disappointed. And so Victor fully knows I do not speak or eat Portuguese, and yet when he's giving his end of class messages, and you know what he's like, he's really good at doing this. He keeps like eye contact with you, like really hard, and he's speaking full Portuguese, but he's looking at me like this. I'm like, this guy knows I don't know what he's talking about right now. Oh yeah, the competitions teams there are great, and and they've got such a depth of talent there with there's Sasha, the Ukrainian guy, who's like a D1 wrestler, and the other I'm forgetting his name, but he's like a wrestling champion, and Professor Pedro as well.
Yeah,
he's my girlfriend Veronica really likes him because she really likes the way he says 5 in the warm up, cinco. So yeah, always good times at Braça da Prata.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a tough training room. And you travelled around Asia a little bit after the trials, right?
Yes.
You went to Bangkok Fight Lab.
Yes, yeah, I went trained there.
Cool.
I trained there a couple of days before the competition. Awesome training there.
Did you train with Professor Morgan there? Was he there?
I don't think. Oh no, yes, of course I did. Yeah, of course. Nice. Yeah, that was awesome. He's such a legend.
Yeah, he's very cool. I stayed there for about 3 months.
Oh wow.
Similar to you, I was like, I'm gonna go traveling, and I was like, I'd been to Bangkok before for Thai boxing, and I knew I wasn't the biggest fan of the city, so I was like, I'm gonna go. I'll do like 2 weeks because I knew through like professor friend of a friend that Professor Morgan at Bangkok Fight Lab, and then I just really liked it there. So I ended up staying for like 3 months to train. And at the time, there was the upstairs part was a vegan cafe and vegetarian. So there was a girl who like I think she's brown belt now, Tammy, who ran the restaurant and then would train. So you could like train. Go up, eat, see the next class being done. It was awesome. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I went there. I went there a couple of times, and then after the competition, I actually strictly took 2 weeks off. I was no jiu-jitsu, no gym, just like walking, swimming. That's it.
Yeah. Do you find? So I'm going to do this real quick. Do you find the rest and recovery part difficult, or is that something that comes okay to you?
Yeah, I find that hard. I think every athlete finds that hard. I'm working on like one thing I've been really working hard to do with my jiu-jitsu and like my career is I decided this very early on. I don't want to get to like the top and realize that I'm only like half of myself. So I've always had this idea of like I want to get there as a whole piece, and that for me means like working on good relationships with my friends, family, my partner, working on other skills like learning how to do business, all of that kind of stuff as well, like all of these other things, having other hobbies, and actually having a functioning body as well. Because I saw this story so many times, like athletes in other sports, they get to, like maybe they win the Olympics or something, and then they just have like depression afterwards because they thought that would bring them something that it doesn't bring you. So I've always had this idea of like, I want to get there in one piece And I know that's going to be harder. And I know that might mean that I won't achieve as much as I could, let's say, if I did choose a different path. So I've been really strict with myself of like, if I'm injured, I rest, or I find a way to train that's like not going to keep just grinding on the same spot. So I'm really passionate about that. But in action, that's like I think I take the actions, but the mindset still sucks. So like, for example, right before ADCC trials, I hurt my wrist and I didn't know what was wrong with it. And I hurt my lower back. Also didn't know what was wrong with it. And I was like, okay, well, by my rule book that I'm making for myself, I need to rest because my training sessions aren't helping me. I'm getting worse each time. I'm not getting anything out of the training sessions because I'm actually not able to do anything. And I need to rest. So I rest and then I do the other stuff that, like my other work or whatever stuff, passions that I can work on. But my mindset is still like, you suck. You're a little bitch. You're weak. Sorry, I don't know if you can swear on here.
You're fine.
You're weak. You don't care enough. You're not like doing what it takes. You don't deserve to win. Every single day, 24 hours a day. That's what I'm hearing for like the whole 2 weeks before ADCC trials, trying to like get ready for this competition. So I was doing the actions of like resting, recovering, listening to my body, listening to all of that, but still hearing the mindset track of like, I think just in general in our sport, there's so much like, keep training, push yourself harder, do all this stuff. And that's amazing, but you have to have the balance and you have to be able to pull out when you need to. And I think I was like, it was really nice to get the result I did at ADC trials. Just like, okay, I made the right choices by resting, because 2 weeks before the competition, you're not going to get better at jiu-jitsu. You're not going to get better cardio. You're not going to get better conditioning. But what you can do is maybe help your injuries.
Yeah.
So I think, like, obviously you have to have periods of time where you're just going for it and pushing through injuries and stuff. But right before a competition, that's not what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I think the answer to the question is like, I try to take the actions to rest properly and recover properly. But my mindset around it still sucks.
It's tough, isn't it? Because when people think about discipline, a lot of times it's around, okay, I'm going to force myself to do the things that I might not want to do. I don't want to go for this run, but I know I should, so I'm going to do it. But it's also like you're doing there. It's, I want to go train. Like, training's fun. It's like, I've got this competition. I want to go do it. But the discipline thing to do is really like, actually, I'm going to abstain from that now, because I know actually, well, hopefully it'll work out better for me.
Yeah.
I think that's a much harder form of discipline sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah.
Tell me about the ADCC run. How did that go?
Yeah, it was cool. It was interesting because I actually been meaning to talk about this, like make a video or something, because I kind of did a tiny little post about it and I never really went into detail. But it was interesting for me because I had one of the worst mindsets that I think I've ever had, ever, going into that competition. I've had some issues recently, the last year and a half, I would say, around like anxiety before competitions, having like panic attacks right before competing, and like just being super in my head for no reason. And this was like kind of the same, but like literally the whole week before, while I was resting, all of this stuff, I was like just beating up on myself. And then once I got to Thailand, I was still just like, I don't know why I'm here. Like, what am I doing? And my husband came out with me, and I just kept feeling like he's bought a ticket. He's taken time off work. I'm going to lose. And he's come all this way to support me. And I'm just like going to let him down. I had this whole like thing in my head. My sister had already booked accommodation for Vegas like 6 months before. And I'm like, I'm going to like, she's crazy. She's so like invested in me. And so I was just like on this thing of like terrible mindset. Once I got to the competition, the whole car ride there, I was like so tempted just to get out of the car and like go eat some food instead. I was like, it was the craziest thing, because normally I love competing. Got to the competition, didn't want to be there, wanted to leave, warmed up, didn't want to warm up, went to like the fight. I was literally just like if anyone's seen me fight, they usually see me like dancing around happy, and I was not. I was just like, I don't want to be here. Did my first fight, won my first fight, didn't feel anything, left the mat, went and warmed up again, did my next fight, submitted the girl, didn't feel anything. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel relieved. I was just like, oh, I've still got 2 more fights. I want to go home. Because I had this idea that like, I knew I would face Nadia in the finals, and I'd lost to her twice at Worlds the year before in December. And so I was like, I'm probably going to get to the finals and then I'm going to lose. And I'm going to spend like 12 hours here just to lose. And then like, it was so stupid. And I was like, my whole family's watching. My sister got up early in the morning. My mum's waiting up late in Australia. It was like this whole thing. Super dramatic. And then, yeah, so then finally I did get into the finals, and then I started to kind of relax a little bit, and I was like, all right, okay, cool, I'm in the finals, all right, let's have some fun. And then I had like 5 hours to wait. So I was like, let me eat some food, chill. Yeah. And by that point it was weird because I'd completely calmed down, and I was like very like in like a meditative state. I wasn't hyped and I wasn't like tired. I was just like chilling. And I didn't have my phone the whole day, so I didn't look at a screen for the entire day. I was only listening to like, you know, those like focus beats that you listen to when you're like working?
Yeah.
Only listening to those, so I didn't get like too hyped up. So just like very, very mellow, which is super different from my normal state. Barely talking, nothing. And then, yeah, I just went on to the finals, and I was kind of like, I had this idea, like I'd been journaling every day, writing down, I am the ADCC trials winner every single night, every single morning. So I think my brain was like conditioned to it already for like 2.5 months before. And I had this idea that like, no matter what happens, if I give 100% or if I give 50%, it's going to be just as much effort. So I was like, I'm going to give 100%. I'm going to do whatever I can to win this fight. I still didn't believe I could though. And then once I got on the mat, everything kind of switched off, and I stopped thinking, and I stopped feeling, and I stopped having emotions, and I was just doing jiu-jitsu. And I was like, cool, let me just do some jiu-jitsu. And I managed to submit her in the finals, which was really cool. It went into overtime, and I submitted her. And that feeling, I was literally just like, it felt like I'd been put to sleep and I was dreaming. And I was so worried that I would wake up and like, it wasn't real. And that stayed for about 2 days. I was like, I can't believe that just happened. Like, what the hell just happened? And I think it just kind of solidified, like, you're on the right path. You're listening to yourself, and you're doing all the right things, and you're the only one that you're accountable to. And like, good job, keep going. So yeah, that was
What was it when you're against this girl who'd beat you twice before? What gave you the self-belief that you could do it? Like you could beat her in this time?
I don't think I thought I would beat her. I think what I've been working on recently is not trying to think too much and just trying to do jiu-jitsu. Because ultimately, like, you can think you can beat someone, you can think you'll lose against someone, but at the end of the day, it's just me executing a technique and her executing a technique. And I knew, so as soon as I stepped onto the mat, I was like, I knew that I was willing to do whatever it took, even if I was exhausted, to win. And as I was progressing through the fight, I could feel that my techniques were impacting her more than hers were impacting me. Not necessarily effectively, but like emotionally. Like I could feel, like the first time I got her into my guard, I could feel that she was freaking out. And I was like, okay, cool. And then so I think I was kind of taking some of her energy and confidence and adding it to myself. And then all her techniques, I was kind of like, instead of freaking out about like, oh, she nearly got a heel hook, I was like, oh, okay, let me just pull the elbow. Let me just push this. Let me turn my hip. Just really like coming back to the basic of jiu-jitsu. And then as the fight progressed, I felt, like I said, like the energy exchange. I could feel her confidence going down and feeding my confidence. And then in the, as the overtime, I was just like, this is it. Like, I just have to go for it. Like, let me just go 100%.
And had you not felt that kind of thing when you competed with her before? Was it like, I'm trying to gauge, like, had you just got better skill wise, or was it something mentally that shifted, like you were saying, where you weren't, like, you were kind of just like flat and you're just gonna do my jiu-jitsu? Or
yeah, I think it was definitely mindset, and I think that allowed me to execute better jiu-jitsu. The last time I fought her, she tapped me out in one of the fights and she beat me on points in the other fight, and I think I felt like I couldn't do as much, but I don't think it was because the technique was a massive gap. I think it was just that I was blocking my own technique because I was too much in my head. Whereas this time I was like, I genuinely didn't have a single thought or feeling apart from what was happening in the moment, which I think is key, because as you see it's like the state of flow you hear about with athletes. And honestly, like once you're in that state of flow, everything just becomes so simple. Like you just have to do whatever the hell's in front of you and just do it.
So when you win trials, how long did it take for it to hit you to be like, oh shit, I'm going to ADCC?
I think it was a good week where I was like I woke up the next morning and I was kind of like, oh, like, is this real still? And I kept asking Bruno, like, did that really happen? He was like, oh, yes, babe, it happened. Like, calm down. And I think like, and then I got this really like intense overwhelm because I hadn't prepared for that, if that makes sense. I didn't know where I was going to do my camp. I didn't know where I was going to like, how I was going to have enough money to, you know, not like work for a couple of months so I can train and like all this stuff. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to have to move out of my flat for a little while so I can afford to like go to Lisbon and train there with Victor Estima for a month. And like, there was like so many things. And I was like, I'm going to have to tell this person that I can't coach, and I'm going to have to tell this person that I'm not going to be there, and then that person. And so it was like very overwhelming. And I think it was really good that I had 2 weeks just off, because it gave me time to just like actually enjoy being in the moment and like eat loads of food and spend time with people I love and all of that. So I think that was really grounding. And then by the time I got back to London, I'd kind of figured out what I wanted to do and where I was going to train and how I was going to supplement my training and have enough money and all of that kind of stuff. So
the logistics of it.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing that was kind of like terrifying, because I was like, I want to be as prepared as possible to go in. And how am I going to do that? So, yeah.
So what are your aspirations for ADCC? Obviously, you know, winning, obviously, but beyond that, have you set yourself any other goals?
Yeah, I think one thing that's become really clear to me in the last year, but like specifically in the last few months, is I just want to get really good at jiu-jitsu. And I think bringing it back down to that really helps me ground myself, because I think, and even before I won trials, I was saying to one of my teammates, I was like, you know what? The reason I want to win trials is because then everyone wants to help you get better. Like, you have a really good reason to just focus on jiu-jitsu and get really good. So that's what I'm focusing on. I want to get really strong. I'm trying to put on weight at the moment so I can kind of be a bit heavier. I want to get really good at jiu-jitsu. I want to try to kind of like work on the like 1% intentions and just like kind of try and fix every area of like my life as much as possible, just to make sure that I'm the best version of myself to go into the competition. And I want to shock everyone. I think being the underdog is great because it means you can.
Well, there was, I think for the 2019 ADCC, there was a big proportion of the trials winners ended up being actual.
Yeah. Well, that was the year that Fionn beat. I think that was the year she broke Bia's arm, right? As a trials winner. So I think like I said, I think with jiu-jitsu there's so much, especially no-gi, there's so much like, it's just about what happens on the day, right? And I think you have nothing to lose as a trials winner. No one knows who you are. No one's really seen you on that stage before. So, and like, it's going to be the first time that I'm really able to get like, or having Victor Estima there, like coaching me for a whole month, that's going to be just incredible, because I've just been kind of trying to coach myself, which is not very effective. So that'll be awesome, just having like that time to just really delve into all this
That'd be very
stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just feel very privileged about that, kind of like having so many incredible people just like, yeah, let's help. Like, let's go all in.
Even I'm thinking, I might go to Portugal. I'll give you a restaurant for the comp team training.
I keep telling everyone, like, I'm going to be there the whole of July. Just come, like, come train. It'll be sick.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So, ADCC, with the kind of big thing this year is the Craig Jones Invitational.
Yeah.
Right? That's the drama this year. Obviously, there's not really a women's thing you could to be tempting you over anywhere. But
exactly.
But what are your initial kind of thoughts around the CJI?
My thoughts are, well, first of all, I try not to I don't really have an opinion particularly, because I think there's not really enough information or like whatever to have an opinion about all these things. For me, that's how I feel. I think it's any type of drama is good because it brings eyes. As you've seen, like I kind of went in a bit of a rabbit hole of like listening to loads of different podcasts about it to try and understand. And Craig Jones is everywhere talking about jiu-jitsu on loads of podcasts that don't normally get that type of cover. So I think that aspect is great, like having so many eyes on it. And I think, well, already Mo's increased the women's prize money to the same as the men's, just literally from that. So great for us.
Great, yeah.
And even just little things like they're going to get everyone their own room on ADCC. So like there's lots of like, I think, little pushes into the better direction. So I think generally speaking, it's going to boost the sport. I think it does. I think it would suck probably as a male athlete because you're on ADCC and then all of a sudden like a lot of the greatest guys are going to be on CJI. So it might be a bit sad, but then at the same time, maybe they have a chance to win where they wouldn't have before.
Yeah, I guess it's tough if you're in the 66 kilogram, you're probably like, well, doesn't matter. Like, I was thinking, Fabricio Andre isn't thinking, I'm going to go he probably would actually, to be fair, but I'm going to go jump into the 80 kilos. Don't worry about that, Sam. Whereas, if you're 99 kg plus or 100 kg, you're thinking like, well, 80 kilograms the limit. I could probably go and do some good stuff there.
Yeah.
I thought everyone who I've seen has switched over, who make like the Tackett brothers, like the content they've made around it have been like really quite heartwarming stuff. They're like, I want to support my family. Or even Fionn with, I just want to be able to give back to charity more. So it's like she's going to just donate her thing to charity. So, and as you say, in terms of getting eyes on the sport as a whole, I think it's really good because, the amount of people who walk into here, I'm like, how did you hear about jiu-jitsu? Like, they're like, oh, Joe Rogan. And it's like, okay, exactly. So if there's guy that's, he's just had one of the Gracies on the Hoist, and now he's just had Craig Jones on. It's like, that's a big bit of momentum. Or Chris Williams.
I was listening to that one too. Yeah.
So like all these, it's good for the sport definitely, and I think hopefully it'll be good for the athletes. Like with the small changes, like I think we can all agree, like probably they should be getting a bit more than 10 grand to be at the biggest competitions. Yeah. But as a spectator, I'm very excited for both, so I can't complain.
Yeah, it's tricky with like prize money and stuff because, like, obviously, if you look at like the Olympics, I don't think they even have prize money for the Olympics, do they?
Like, there isn't, but I think your country the country gives you the prize money, not the Olympics itself. Okay,
but I feel like with stuff like ADCC and IBJJF and stuff, the goal is, the way I see it is like, that's what kind of props you up. That's what gets you to a place where at the moment jiu-jitsu is still so small that like, yes, maybe they could pay the athletes more, but also maybe they can't. Like, who knows? I don't really go into too much detail about it. But if you're using that properly and you're promoting yourself properly, that can be a huge impact to getting seminars and stuff like that. So I think for where the sport's at the moment, there's a lot of like finger pointing and like pay me more and all of this stuff, which I think is really important on one side. But on the other side, I also think that most of the time it's not corruption and like greed. It's just like, we're a growing sport. Maybe we don't know how to make money enough to pay the athletes loads, or maybe we're trying to grow too fast and put more money into production, or like, I don't know if there's like malintention behind not paying athletes. I think it's lack of, maybe just lack of like skills in promotion and all of that kind of stuff. Like, you don't know. Right?
I think it's probably always a fine balance, isn't it? Because even UFC fighters who will be getting paid significantly more still argue about pay all the time, right? So, and I think Dana White says, like, this is a platform on which you can, it's a promotion. Yeah. Just like, we're advertising you, you go make the most of it. Yeah. It's just tough because if you are someone who is going to be, obviously, if you are, the easiest, if you are a very attractive girl, then it's going to be really easy to promote yourself. Yeah. Whereas if you are if you're a Brazilian dude who can't speak English and no one really cares about your story, then getting seminars and instructionals,
That
or
makes it tough.
however, you know, it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a different pathway. I hope they all end up getting more pay out of it for sure.
Yeah.
I think definitely more is well deserved when you think about, because you know, being peripherally and around the sport of the competitive side of things, like the amount of skill and training you need to get onto that stage is so far beyond what most people can imagine.
Yeah.
To not really be compensated for all that hard work beforehand is kind of crazy.
It's really, it's so hard to like, the balance is so hard, because on the one hand, it's like, it's a business. You're an athlete, you're a business. And I think a lot of athletes, myself included, it would be great if you could just train and then go and compete and then that's it. Like, that would be awesome. Like, but the reality of that is, that's so far from what the reality is. Like, if you're a professional sprinter, let's say, there's so much more money in that. Or if let's say footballer, for example, because that's obviously the easiest one. There's so much more money in that. So you can just, you know, train and that's it. But there's so many more eyes on that, and there's so much more competition in that as well. So to get to the point where you're getting paid to play football, that's like a tiny, tiny portion of the people that wanted to do that. Whereas jiu-jitsu, yes, maybe we don't get paid as much, but the opportunity is a little bit higher as well. Like, you can, I believe anyone that comes to me and says like, I want to be a black belt world champion, they can do it. Like, if they just actually put in the work and the time, they can do it. But anyone who comes to like a footballer and says, I want to be on the world, like, you know,
Premier League.
I don't know anything about football. Sorry.
Me either, don't worry.
Embarrassing myself. Then the chances, you're probably going to be like, ooh, like, are you talented?
Are you 3 years old and ready to start?
Yeah, like, do you know what I mean? And do you have like your parents willing to like not put you into school and like drive, like the amount of people, like it's so much harder. There's so much more competition. So there's a flip side to everything. It's the same with like, I always say the same with like women's jiu-jitsu and men's jiu-jitsu. Like, the reality is that like, I mean, maybe I'll upset people by saying this, but the reality is that like, if I was a dude with my skill and my like the length of training, I probably wouldn't have won the trials, because there's more guys. There's less women, so there's less competition, which means I get more opportunity, but at the same time, less opportunity. So there's like two sides to everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard to like, it's all really hard. The way I like to do is just try to be creative and figure out how can we all make this sport better. Yeah.
And hopefully at the same time make a little bit of money. You know?
Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, let's leave it there for the podcast. You got your seminar you're teaching tonight. Do you know what you're teaching?
Yes, I'm going to be looking at some attacks from close guard.
Nice.
So that'll be fun.
Good. I'm excited, especially for the kids, really, because the last time we had a kids seminar was around when we first opened, which was Victor.
Yeah.
You're actually following quite a hard run of seminars, I think, right now. It was Hodger in December, then both Braulio and Victor together, and Marcus, all three black belt brothers, and now yourself. So.
Wow, yeah, that is a run to follow. Yeah. I'll do my best.
Yeah. No pressure. But yeah, it's going to be an amazing time, I'm sure. And you guys, if you want to know more about Sula, I'll leave your Instagram is probably the best way to kind of see your stuff. I'll leave that in the description and bio stuff. So be sure to follow her journey, and especially around ADCC. So it's really nice to be able to support people from our affiliation, Gracie Baja, and support those guys follow their dreams. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.